So this is going to be all about how to recognize when you've abandoned yourself. This is going to be by far my most confusing video I've ever made yet. So I put a few videos in the description down below you can check out to make more sense of this one. And while you're there, join my email list, because when I'm writing these, I have like 80 ideas all at once. And honestly, making longer videos is a little bit hard. So it's basically a place where I have all these ideas while I'm making these videos where I could put it in bite-sized form, as well as other content too. It's pretty much my behind the scenes in written form, I guess. You'll like it. Anyways, this topic of abandoning yourself, it just needs to be talked about. It's something that's just way too easy to overlook too often. And I know how common this behavior is for you empaths, so this one's for you. Although I'm sure everyone will be able to relate to this in some way. Because as a fellow emotional sponge, I don't find much information or perspectives on this. So I wanted to make this one specifically for you guys. Because being concerned with other people's emotions all the time, it's honestly just exhausting. And it's important to find a way to be a little selfish without becoming a total asshole. No one should feel as if they have to be a perfect giver. That makes no sense. Sometimes allowing yourself to say no to something is just hard as fuck. And it's even more important to catch yourself when you do start feeling as if you're a terrible person for not wanting to do something for other people. Because learning the ability to say no to certain things, not because you're mean or anything, but because there are just certain seasons in your life where you can't tend to everyone's emotional needs or or meet certain obligations, and you have to put yourself first if you want to move forward. But to learn how to do this properly, and obviously I'm still in the process of learning how to do so, we have to dive in internally to learn how to communicate with ourselves properly as well with other people. You know me personally, you know I'm not the best at this. I am getting better though. That's why this video is being made. Because when you're trying to make progress on your own personal and mental development, or you're trying to build up a business or brand, or sometimes you just need like space away from everyone, you're going to need that time and energy on you for a certain period of time. And it's important that you notice that I included energy in there too. It's because at this point in my life, I'm able to work only a couple hours a week and still live decently. And because of all this time that I have now, I've learned that it's not really only a matter of time. And it's always been more of a matter of the energy that you give out, like your attention on certain things. Because where you decide to put your attention is how you're gonna be able to allow your intuition to flourish and get answers that don't even seem plausible or make sense, but then next thing you know, it works out. See, I told you guys this would be confusing. For me to gather information on these videos, read books, dive into a little bit of Eastern philosophy so I can expand my perspective beyond science, and also dabble in neuroscience here and there too on top of that. Listening to lectures and podcasts, creating the very system of my current job that allows me to lower my time actually working, studying crypto, managing my volatile mental health. It requires a certain mind to maintain that level of motivation. A mind I'm gonna explain to you how to create. And I'm not saying I'm the most motivated person ever. I'm actually insanely lazy. That right there is the misconception of motivation. We associate strictly with what you do and how you're feeling in that moment. But that's not the only pieces of the puzzle. The only reason that feeling of motivated is there on a neurochemical level is because that feeling of being motivated is really just a dopamine surging through your body, anticipating that something good is gonna happen or that you're about to complete something. Although that surge of dopamine you feel in your body, it just goes in a direction. Like it doesn't give a shit what you're motivated towards. It's just gonna be motivated towards doing something. Like for example, you could be motivated towards finding and doing heroin. And the search for finding heroin will be the same as the search of dopamine you get when you're about to do a workout that you like. Although for you to truly gain access and control over that part of your brain where you're motivated, you will have to learn the ability of holding a single thought steady in your mind. So that surge of dopamine in your body knows which direction to take. You want to give it a direction to head in. And when you're in that state, that feeling of being motivated isn't as if you're insanely disciplined. You don't feel disciplined or that you're amazing or anything. You're just doing what you need to do without any extra obligations or desires trying to bump that single thought you're trying to hold in your mind outside of your head. The single thought you're trying to maintain is held steady when desires come across. This is where it's gonna begin to start tying back to abandoning yourself. That's why when you need alone time, you're not really asking to just be alone. What you're asking for is that space for you to hold that single thought of your personal development or whatever you're working on inside your head. And the only thing that can bump that thought out of your head is your desires. On a primal level, basically just like whatever you crave. When your desires have the ability to bump that one thought you're trying to hold steady inside of your head and replace it with the need for attention or validation, that's where the problem of abandoning yourself begins. The moment I had this epiphany was when I was watching one of Dr. K's interviews. For those who don't know him, he's a psychiatrist that streams, has therapeutic sessions with gamers and many other people. I'll put the video I'm gonna be talking about in this I'm gonna put the video I'm referring to right now in the description down below. I mean, while you guys are doing that, you may as well sign up for my email list. And in that stream, he was having a talk of a streamer who just enjoys making people happy. It's why she streams, it's why she makes content, it's why she just does good things for people on and off camera. Long story short, Dr. K knows that there's a trend she was following when she's doing all these nice things. It's like she's able to invite everyone else to feel the love, but she forgets to make the space for her to feel that love as well. And I sometimes find it so hard to remember to make that space for myself too. And in my case, maybe even most of our cases, it's probably not because we're such amazing people. It's because the thought of where I fall in this equation, the space that was supposed to be held for myself, gets bumped out by the desire on how I can get validation or how I can eliminate a negative emotion like shame, guilt. That becomes my motivation instead of the single thought I'm trying to hold. That's gonna cause me to act a certain way by doing things I don't actually want to do. This is gonna be so hard to explain, but I'm just gonna trust you know what I'm saying when you do something you don't want to fucking do and you just do it anyway. Not out of the goodness of your heart. Sometimes, yeah, but like I said before, you might act that way out of shame, obligation, or guilt. On top of this affecting you, this also fucks with the person on the other end too. Now they're confused as how overthinking their every move, putting both people in a spot where they can't even freely express themselves. I can't think of many examples, so I honestly don't know how to do this properly yet. I'm just making this video to open up the conversation you should have with yourself about this. But I think by now you should understand the general idea I'm trying to convey here. It's honestly like this compulsion, this need to put other people's emotions ahead of your own. Basically, you do things to meet the needs of other people, even if you don't have the emotional bandwidth to give, just to avoid a bad reaction from them. And what I'm trying to say is that honesty with yourself and with them is the way to break this vicious cycle of guilt. Anyways, that's a whole other rabbit hole. Back to Dr. K. Dr. K asked her if there's a positive feel she feels when she does these acts of kindness, or if there's a negative feeling that comes with it. And when he asked her that, you could tell that everything just like linked together in her mind. And she said that she feels both, and that the positive feeling feels good, and that she obviously likes doing good things for other people, but she feels as if that she's not in the picture when this is happening. Agreeing to doing things you don't want to do for the sake of putting other people's happiness way ahead of your own. Acting a certain way. Feeling as if you have to answer texts and calls in a timely manner. I'm not trying to advocate you guys just become sociopaths, okay? I hope that was clear. It's a fantastic thing to put people's emotions first. Although, where do you put yourself when you're doing it? I'm still working and studying a shit ton on all this, and also looking for like a proper therapist to go to. And by the way, guys, go to a therapist. Don't solo run this shit, or any shit actually. You are the common denominator of all your problems, so it's a good thing to get somebody on the outside take a look under the hood. Despite that, even before you do go see someone or get some extra help, you can still start by building up the awareness to catch yourself when you do these things. And this is where you can start to begin to identify whether or not your desires for the need for attention, for validation, are just bumping you totally out of the equation. If you can find out what your core desire is that keeps occupying that space inside of your brain, then you're gonna really start to make some progress. Because your core desire that occupies its space is not gonna be the same as mine. Do not copy me. Because this shit is it's so fucking hard to notice. You don't even really end up finding out that you've abandoned yourself. You just start noticing other things outside of you of a higher priority. Now, naturally, when you feel as if you've abandoned yourself, you're gonna wanna try to reconnect. And since that feeling of abandonment is so terrifying, it's almost instinctual to just grab onto the things that relieve that tension the quickest, or give us the illusion that we've reconnected with ourselves for that little moment. Now, I am starting to think that grabbing onto certain external activities might not always be a bad thing, because we could use these activities if we go in with the right intentions to practice maintaining that single thought inside of our head of our choosing. And you'll see later on that I actually use something external myself to reconnect a little better with myself. Although in my experience, You have to be prepared for whatever the consequences can follow, because you can start depending on what you end up using. And this is definitely not limited to just drugs, because you might get addicted to that thing, or that thing doesn't maintain its reliability. And that's why even though things like sex, movies, video games, and all that stuff like that are awesome, once you get it, now you just be abandoning yourself and your well-being just to maintain that connection and relationship that you have with that thing. Instead of fostering a deeper connection within yourself, to practice maintaining a steady thought in your mind, a steady thought that doesn't get bumped by those desires. And take it from me, I would consider myself a retiring veteran when it comes to abandoning myself just to keep those things around. Without the proper balance and control, you'll lose yourself in them. What you need to do is practice delaying gratification. And during that practice, you're gonna notice some pain and discomfort, like what I talked about in my Stopping Toxic Behavior series. And in that moment, when you're quite literally in emotional pain, it's gonna seem as though that you're doing something wrong or something's not working. When in reality, that pain and discomfort is just an indicator that you're going in the right direction. This is what's gonna rebuild new dopamine pathways that are gonna allow you to feel good when indulging in more of like a healthier escape, or maintaining a healthy frequency in how much you indulge in activities like that. Pathways that don't make you feel shitty for putting things that are necessary for your psychological needs on the back burner. I'm gonna make a more in-depth video on this, don't worry. I have a theory that building those pathways and saying no and giving ourselves that necessary space, it needs a lot more strengthening. That's why the practice of saying no and properly communicating that is extremely beneficial. So the big problem here is our reward center inside our brains. So how do we hack it? It really comes down to where you get your dopamine and endorphins and other neurochemicals from. So to understand this, I'm gonna put some dopamine producing activities in the level of tiers. I'm not gonna name off every single activity, just the most common one. So at the S tier, right up here, we got sex, we got working out, we got food. We got these things that produce these super healthy peaks, and for good reason, because they contribute to our survival as a species and ourselves. But they have these super high peaks, so you can get pretty addicted to them. Then we have like the Z tier type of stuff. I'm just gonna put drugs. Like doing meth. I'm not even gonna explain it. And then we have the one somewhere in the middle, like video games, movies, and things like that, because they can be terrible with you if you don't go in using it with like a clear intention. Yeah, I know if you don't use anything with a clear intention, that could go with anything, so just bear with me. That's why we have to find a way to practice giving ourselves an internal reward that doesn't rely on like validation from like a gold star or getting the attention or approval from someone. We gotta work to control those dopamine and endorphins high in tiny concentrated doses. And we do that by building up the connection within in literally the most boring way possible, which is slowly. That way we can give ourselves time to practice and gain balance and control. If you feel as if you've abandoned yourself, do not start with the super high peaks off the bat. Because it's already so hard to recognize when you've abandoned yourself. Can you imagine trying to identify this when you're supercharged with emotions and on that fucking high? You may never notice. You also might be thinking that to feel this way, where you actually are like a slave to your desires. Do you let your desires become the sole thought of your mind? It takes an intensely like traumatizing event to trigger that. No. It could be the result of just subliminal priming as life just happened, or you straight up had nothing happen to you and you just still think this way. Anything that has you convinced that even though if you were to have anything that you had, that you are still lacking without what you desire most. Misunderstanding yourself as not whole and complete, to the point where you don't even notice how damn bad you are without working out daily, working on your business or studies, or being in a relationship, or having sex constantly, or being productive, or whatever it is, that thing that you now latch onto. And what I found is that the thing that you long for isn't what you lack most. What you lack most is yourself. This entire video I've been talking about the abandonment of self, although what I think is going on is that you've lost yourself and you have no idea where to look. That's why it's just easier to think our problems can be solved outside of ourselves. But there might be a way to use this need to indulge in escapes to our advantage. And to figure out how I think it's possible, we have to look at where we even got the idea to think that we need to escape in the first place. Upon my digging, I found this guy, the psychologist by the name of Patrick Tahan. Now you've probably assumed or by now deduce that this is a result of some sort of emotional abuse that happened in your life. And this emotional abuse is what taught you to abandon yourself. Now, where this might get confusing is that there's a lot of gray areas when it comes to this, because Patrick then explains that the intensity that you experience emotional abuse through external stimuli because of the intensity that you interpret it internally, meaning your perception of the event makes up the severity of it, not just the event itself. Someone who came from a tricky environment where you were emotionally smothered by your parents, or you were taught to hide certain emotions, and someone who came from a blatantly abusive environment who, let's say, was just humiliated daily. Even those are two very different events that will trigger the same result of being taught to abandon yourself. Now, obviously, the result of being taught to abandon yourself isn't only exclusive to those two events. It could be so many other ones. I just want to really emphasize the damage that being taught to hide your emotions can do. You are not just your happiness, excitement, and joy. You are also your uncertainty, confusion, and anger, because you are taught to keep hidden those parts of you. It's hard for you to find a moment where you feel as if you're internally reliable. It's hard for you to create that space where you feel secure, left with a void that's filled up with, you guessed it, your desire. It's just such a strange feeling to describe, because you could be down atrocious and not even know. Because it's even harder to recognize it before your ego turns to blind arrogance and starts masking that arrogance with insecurity. There's a point in my life where I lived like this for years without even noticing, just because like that was the reality that I just got used to. And before I tell you what I did to start fixing this, once again, get a real therapist. You don't need to be down in the dumps to go and get one. I know the things I share work for me. For you, maybe not. Ideally, you're just here to gather some perspective, which is a good thing, because your growth as a person is not my responsibility. If it was, you would be in trouble, because it was your own biases and beliefs that block you from viewing the objective and subjective truths that have led you to the mental state that you're currently in. Recognize these conclusions that you've made inside of your head. Whether you're religious or not, these conclusions are your entire belief system, and your belief system is your GPS on where you're heading, which is why the practice and control of maintaining a single thought steady in your mind is so important. So if the problem is that you've abandoned yourself, the solution would be to find a way to reconnect with yourself. And that could be done just by listening to your gut. My time of abandonment, my gut told me to just do whatever the fuck I feel like. So I did, which in this case was to literally indulge in as much art as humanly possible, like what I consider to be art. Watching some favorite shows and movies, playing some games, writing these videos, not just passively, but by intensively paying attention to every working piece that's going on, by holding the thought steady in my mind of how does this all work, to the point where I can allow myself to surrender to every element of that activity, and to be able to hold that activity as a single thought in my head, to see how the sum of all those parts can come together to create an entirely new whole, just like clockwork, or like a symphony coming together. I also like the game Dark Souls 3 because of that, because the combat, the music, oh, damn. It's honestly more of a masterpiece than going on a chaotic binge with this intention is honestly what worked for me. I just allowed myself to go in that direction. And this won't make sense to 90% of you. This is because we can all be looking at the same thing and be seeing and getting something different from it. Some people are able to do what I do with what I consider to be art with psychedelics, when some psychedelics actually fuck me up. Like, I can't smoke weed for some reason. It messes me up. But you see, like, your answer is just not my answer. My answer is not your answer. If you're constantly trying to cater to the emotions of others and the standard that you have set for yourself, and I can bet that we have all been doing that for the majority of our lives, starting from when we were a kid and having to carry on over to where we are right now. We have to understand that kid in us has never left, and its ideals, every single ideals, especially the one that wants to take care of everybody else around it, have stuck around. Although, who's got that kid's back? Someone's gotta have that kid's back, and it's gotta be you. You gotta support the crazy ideals that child has. When we are able to fully engage in something without the intrusive whispers of negative thoughts that either keep us tethered to the past or worrying about the future, and we are able to fully immerse ourselves with what we're doing in the present, like right here, right now, in this moment, the act of engaging in your activity of choice that aligns with your perspective in a healthy way is a source of healing, because it needs to reconnect, to escape the chaos that is our thoughts and allow for order to enter in harmony is the part of art we end up taking part in. The only word that can describe the healing property that art can give us, without this video being 2 hours long, would be magic. And if you were to take a look at everything that went into creating that piece of art, you'd see the role that chaos played in its creation. Before the finished piece, there were missed deadlines, there were setbacks, mistakes made, doubts, confusion, mix-ups, a lot of anger, me accidentally returning the wrong mic, and having to end up buy a brand new one, which led to the delay of this video. Art is the encapsulation of chaotically and good and bad emotions, expressed through a medium like a painting or a song, or even dance, or even a sport, or even a video game. The list is honestly infinite. So when we see themes like sadness conveyed by like our favorite creators, through art you can share the same feeling that the artist held when creating that piece, only now through their perspective, and view the final product of their way of organizing the chaos they faced when they came in contact with that emotion. Because magic is organizing chaos. And while oceans of mystery remains, this requires two things: balance and control. Without them, chaos will kill you. Try and guess what show I got that from. If you can apply balance and control to the things that you use to heal you, you will open up a whole new realm that you've literally been blind to this entire time, and maybe even find yourself in the process. Now you're probably sitting here a little upset because I didn't tell you how to gain balance and control. Well, I already did in my other video. If you want balance and control, you have to give it a purpose. Constraints for chaos to freely operate within. Although to take a step back to find this, you don't need to decide on your purpose right away, and to let everybody in your life know what's going on, and like that's the sort of season that you're gonna go through right now. We're talking about learning how to feel less guilty for doing what's right for you. Sometimes you just gotta do shit that defies logic and makes no sense if you wanna get to where you want. And you can't do that if you're consumed with your desires all of the time. Over time, just let the reason you decide to step back fall into place, and watch how something so chaotic like emotions or a series of events falls in line with what you truly want. That's all I gotta say. This video is probably like 20 minutes long. Haven't edited yet. I'm guessing my bet's on 20 minutes. No, yeah, probably 19 minutes. Anyways, that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed this. I hope this helped you out a lot. Sign up for my email list down below. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon.